So the first flasher we're going to be building is a throw flasher. We're going to be using PVC pipe as the main component. It allows it to sink slowly enough and it's easily replaceable, although you don't want to lose this. You need super glue, bird repellent tape, which I'm going to include the link for in the description below. So the adhesive is a little weaker and any cuts on the PVC, kind of like the one I'm showing there, reduce the ability for the tape to adhere to the tube, which is the whole point of the super glue. The first time I made these flashers, they were peeling up in the corner. Fish would go and nibble at it, and it would, over time, begin to pull off the PVC. Super glue makes sure that any seams bond onto the PVC completely. You want to start measuring out the size of the bird repellent flasher tape, and then kind of roll it like a cigar, going from the center outwards to make sure that you get a steady and even coat without any bubbles on the inside. Since this bird repellent flasher is pretty cheap, it's okay if you mess up, you can restart, and the roll is pretty large, you can do a ton of these flashers. And you, once again, for this type of, it was about, I think, a half an inch PVC pipe, took about 2 of those pieces, and they lined up pretty evenly. You're going to pay attention to the seams along both sides and at the top and the bottom, and you go along it. If you had the brush super glue, it'd be even better. I used a paper towel or a brush to spread it around. This just means that there's no open pockets where water can get into it and start lifting up the tape. You drill a hole through one of the sides of the PVC. It's up to you which one, and you can go ahead and crimp it. And now that I added this tuna clip, it actually means it's a heavier flasher. These ones, when I add that, I would clip onto my float line, kind of like you see in this video. I'll let these examples of the flasher go along while I keep talking about it. So once you put a tuna clip on it, it makes it easier to carry, as you can clip it to your weight belt or to your float line like this. It's quick and easy flasher with less tangles, so you don't need extra components. The other thing I would say though is if you want it to sink slowly, this is not the right method to do it. You wouldn't add the tuna clip, you would just keep the PVC by itself with the flasher tape, and you can throw those and keep them in your wetsuit. But here you can see a Spanish mackerel was a little curious but got scared. By throwing the flasher, he turned around and it gave me a chance to chase after him. I didn't manage to get him, but it's still an example how this bird repellent tape, despite the super glue making it a little hazy above water, once it's underwater it's very shiny. And this works for reef fish as well that are a little curious. I prefer using these for areas where I can anchor up my float line. I'm able to set it down and just kind of hover over it and then throw one of the flashers without the tuna clips right before I go dive. Let it sink. It's a little extra motion like that, kind of like this, and you can go down, pick it up, and sit down there watching for any fish to come by. Here you see a big school of amberjacks coming right back in to see the flasher, which gave me an opportunity to shoot a second one while still having the first one on the spear gun. It's instances like these where the flasher is incredibly useful, where if not, you would have lost the fish or their interest in that area. This next set is going to be a hanging flasher. It's pretty much going to be an umbrella rig at the bottom of the line, held down with a weight, and the flashers themselves are practically plastic water bottles with flasher tape on them. You can buy the flasher tape that won't be able to come up as easily from companies like Mako. It's pretty cheap. I think it's like 25-50 cents per like a 4 or 5 inch long piece, about an inch and a half to 2 inches wide. This type of flasher is something I would bring into deeper water. You can drop it to about 30-40 feet, whatever you want, and just like let it float there, and hover over it and check on it a little bit. So I'm going to be using a Perrier bottle. It can be any bottle, but I like the green because on the opposite side the flashing tape actually holds a different type of color. because it's slightly translucent, so you're able to see the shine and the reflection on both sides. Practically imagine the water bottle as, Play-Doh. Cut it to whatever shape you want, fish shape, oval shape, a rectangular. It's just whatever you want to design with it, along with the flasher tape. If you get it perfectly on there, this bird repellent tape should not come off as easily. Pretty small ones are nice to spread around, put on the tip of your gun. Larger ones are much better if you're going to have it sitting at the bottom. And pretty much once you manage to cut the shape out, you need something that's small and metal that can handle heat and retain it for a little while. This, what it pretty much does is that when you heat it up, you can poke a hole through the plastic of the water bottle, but it kind of cauterizes the circle so that it's not as easy to tear out. I end up using just a little bit of super glue just in case if any of those parts might end up lifting up. And then you take your split ring and you just start looping it through, and there you go, you have a flasher. You go with the same 500-pound mono you would use on your spear gun. You want to make a loop at the top to tie onto whatever your float that you're using with the line, and a couple loops throughout the body, however far apart you want. I do about 6 to 12 inches apart, and that's just how far apart your flashes are going to be. You can, go ahead and make loops like these just to have them preset, and you can add an O-ring or split ring to your flashers that you just finished making. One thing I would recommend is when you're making those loops, to before you crimp down the edge, put a snap swivel on there, which means that you can switch out between your flashers that you build if you want to put larger ones, if you want to change the size or the color or the material, whatever it is, you're able to change it much easier than if you just have it completely done on there. Or you can go ahead and zip tie your flashers onto the loops that you just made. Pretty much you're going to repeat the flasher making process with the water bottles or plexiglass for all the loops and all the corners of the umbrella rig, which means you're looking at between 4 to 10 or 20, however many flashers you want on there. And it's easy to deploy with something like the float that Mako has. You just wrap it around and use a hairband tie, and you can easily remove and install it as much as you want. Both of these flasher types, both the hanging and the throwing flasher, are just kind of the basic level that you can start off by making. They are cheap and they are easily accessible with these different materials. You can skip the crimps, you can just tie knots on, a lighter mono or rope or line, whatever it is. It's all up to, your creative ability. You can even go all the way over and use plexiglass for a more durable material where you can bend it with a heat gun or an intense amount of heat. You can use zip ties like you're seeing here. There's so many different applications and uses that is all, you know, you're able to go ahead and be creative and try new things with this, especially with that roll of bird flasher tape. It's enough that you can continuously try to make something new and different and see what it is that works best for your region.